morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I was telling Jonathan to play on, thinking in my head there was 3 minutes to go, but there isn't. It's 11 o'clock, it's time to worship. Whew, the 3-minute countdown didn't work this morning, I'm not sure why, but everything gets tested before worship, including our nerves. Isn't that right? So good morning, we are so glad you're here to worship with us today, whether you're worshiping with us online or in the building. It is such a joy to worship together. And our theme today is the last in a 3-week series, but it's okay because you didn't need to have the first 2 in order to get this one. Is my favourite. Gentleness and Self-control. So those of you who know me well know that self-control is an issue, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. So, Jackie's doing slides for us today. Yay! So, if anything goes wrong, it's helpful. Put it on for me, please. So, there are lots of opportunities to engage in the life of our church, as there always are, but this week seems particularly busy. Today, after worship, 12:15, because it's a formal meeting, we have to start it at a particular time. 12:15 is our annual congregational meeting. Everybody is welcome to come, and members really should be here. So you all need to sign in, members and guests, so that after worship, and then we're going to have a barbecue outside. Cecil's been cooking it up since about 8 o'clock this morning, so I'm looking forward to seeing what he has for us today. This week, on Thursday at 7 p.m, is our mustard seed group, but we're doing it online because a lot of people don't want to drive in the winter evenings and it's cold. So we're going to do it on Zoom. This week we're going to be talking about spirituality. Spirituality. So that's Thursday at 7. Friday at 7 is a Friday night worship, and we're not doing that online, we're doing that in person. And if you were here last time for Friday night worship, you will know it was the place to be. It was happening. There was lovely energy in the place, and it felt like there was 100 people here. So, but there wasn't, so it's nice and safe. So that's Friday night. What else have we got? Saturday night. Saturday is Transgender Day of Remembrance. You know, it's such a sad day that we have to have a day to remember the people from our trans community who have been killed. But it's so important that we come together and that we support the community and we honour the lives that have been taken brutally, which I have to say are usually trans women of colour. So Bo Diddley Plaza at 7 o'clock on Saturday night. The trans community are organising it. We're tabling. If anybody wants to table with me, that would be fantastic. Some youth would be good to balance out my non-youth. So that's Saturday, and a huge thank you to Steve and to Kathy and to Sue and Cecil, who, as usual, were out on Tuesday doing lots of work in the grounds, and we really appreciate everything you do. Kathy and Sue are up in New York today, just as somebody that they know has come to visit them at church. So we're so sorry. But we're glad you're here. And the last thing is that flowers today are from Jackie. So thank you. Oh, are you ready to worship?
Yes.
What a mighty God we serve. Right as you are. we ask your blessing on this service today as we bring all of who we are, our pains, our hurts, our joys, our blessings, the whole of us before you in worship today. And we ask your blessing on this service and each one of us. Amen. Please be seated.
The first reading comes from Gentleness and Self-control by Deborah Ann Belton. May the gift of self-control be something daily you present. May you show self-restraint when others do things to upset. May you manage your temper when others have lost theirs. May you defuse the situation whenever tensions start to flare. May you hold your own tongue when others are being rude. May your silence be what alerts the unpleasantness of their mood. May you harness your pride when others' egos are deflated. May you constrain cause their arrogance to be deflated. May the gift of temperance you give to others every day. May you have self-control no matter what comes your way. And from 2 Peter. And besides this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness.
Amen. I think today's theme is going to be difficult, but that's okay because we can lift our praises up and just see what happens.
second reading comes from Philippians. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice, and the God of peace will be with you.
Amen.
Good morning.
Good
I thought this part coming up was going to be rough, but that clicker thing, I don't know, man. My hands are sweaty. I'm sweating. Oh, that's a lot. That is a lot of responsibility, I just got to say. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jacqueline LePerrier. I'm a board member here at Trinity MCC, and it's my pleasure to speak with you this morning about the offertory and giving thanks. Sit back, relax. I'm going to take a few minutes and share some thoughts with you this morning. I've never done this before. I have to be honest. I've never got up at church and spoke, to the congregation about this subject. But I decided that I would volunteer and take it on today because the Lord spoke to me, and I wanted to share this with you today. My words are going to be part testimony, maybe a little glimpse into who I am. Part statistics, that's the scientist in me. And the usual request as my role in a board member. Since being elected 2 years ago, it's really been an interesting ride. I mean, think about it, 2 years ago, it was right before the pandemic.
Right.
And it's been a privilege to serve as one of your representatives. And I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you, both those of you here in person and those watching at home, for your generosity during this time. Especially again in light of the unprecedented time we've just been through. And think about it, if we had $1 for every time we heard, said, or read unprecedented time in the last 2 years, the church would be in good standing if we just donated that to the church. So again, thank you. Thank you so much. My traditional view of church in the past has been the following. Arrive just as the service starts, sit on the last row, near the door, and take off as soon as the service is over. So it was, a little over 3 years ago now, when I had what I would call a life-changing event occur in my life, that I came here, that I came to church. And when I arrived, before the service began, not too far before the service began, I scanned the back row for an empty chair, and perhaps a friendly face. I'm so disappointed that they're not here this morning, but you all want to guess who was sitting on the back row on that given?
Maybe.
No, it was Davey. The dean was just there with Davey. He was wagging his tail. He was so welcoming.
Just say it's a dog, in case anybody.
Yeah, he's Labrador, sorry. Davey is Medine's service dog. And yes, Medine was there as well, and she was extremely welcoming. And so my journey began. One of self-discovery, getting to know the love and support of a church family, and leaning heavily, and I do mean heavily, on a pastor that, even though I was a stranger to her in that moment, opened up her office door, listened in a most difficult time for me, a most difficult time of personal struggle. So Catherine, thank you as well. So now for some statistics. 60,000 churches, or 20% of all churches in America, could close within the next 18 months. Probably for financial issues, I would guess. Only 52% of churchgoers say that when COVID is over, they want to return primarily to in-person worship. So I think we might all agree that the COVID-19 pandemic will bring a fundamental change in the way Americans attend church. When we look at actual congregations, for the first time ever, less than half of Americans say they belong to or are members of a local church. Harvard University did a survey of its incoming freshman class. 39% of students identified as atheists and agnostics, more than the number of Catholics and Protestants added together. And 68% of all evangelical churches in the U.S. have a congregation with less than 100 people, and half of those churches with less than 50. And looking at more LGBTQ issues, almost 50% of all evangelicals 18 to 29 years of age favor same-sex marriage. I find that interesting statistics. That's a group that we want to reach out to. That's a group that we want to bring in. If that, fortunately, is the way that they're looking at same-sex marriage. And 54% of all U.S. churches, I found this surprising, I shared this statistic with Pastor Catherine, allow openly gay or lesbian couples to have full-fledged memberships. Now, though they allow our membership, and they will take our offerings, I'm not sure they're necessarily welcoming, but at least it's a good trend, because that's a 70% increase compared to just, I shouldn't say just, 12 years ago. And finally, a few statistics about pastors. 9% of pastors work 55 to 75 hours per week. Yep. And I'm guessing if they're lucky, only get paid for 40. And maybe during a pandemic, a little bit less. 50% feel unable to meet the demands of their job. And only 10% actually retire from ministry, with over half of pastors not making it 5 years. Sometimes because of the stress, sometimes also because of financial reasons, because of churches having, unfortunately, to close the doors. So some people might say, why is the church always asking us for money? Something to think about in that regard. There's dining out at a restaurant, right? We all do that, especially if we're back to it now, I hope, to some degree. We sit down at a table, we meet the wait staff who take care of us for the next 30 to 60 minutes, perhaps longer. We chat, we order, we eat, we chat some more. And then they have the audacity at the end to bring us a check and ask us to pay and tip on our meal. So I ask you, why should church be any different? We attend worship on Sunday, either in person or virtually. We're able to join various Zoom calls that you've been conducting over the last year, pastor chats, coffee chats, mustard seed, the camping experience is something we're able to do here on site in person. Or perhaps we volunteer on Saturday to help come in and beautify the grounds and enjoy the fellowship of our fellow members and friends and congregants. Are these not ways in which the church is feeding us? So this is really about stewardship. I had to look that up. I had to look up the definition in the Merriam Dictionary. It's defined as the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. All who have come before us and those who started this church have entrusted this church to our care, this church community to our care. Some of them are here today. Yes?
Yeah.
Next week, Pastor and Kathy Coyer are going to be launching a stewardship campaign, and those of you staying for the annual congregational meeting will hear a little bit more about that later today. And the title of that campaign is Strengthening Community and Spreading Love. And I'll let the details be shared later today and next week. And you can support us in a number of ways, through your time and talent, as well as through your treasure. There's numerous volunteer opportunities available, and there'll be more as we continue to reopen and we get to the first of the year. And of course, your treasure through offering and regular tithing is appreciated. So I ask you to consider in what ways you can support this church, its ministry, and the community that we serve. As for me, I want to announce that I will be matching every dollar donated to the general fund starting with today through the end of the year. So now is the time, if you are moved by the Spirit, maybe catching up on some Sundays that you weren't able to attend, or perhaps want to honor the holiday season, or just want to challenge me to donate more, to step up, and please make those donations now before the end of the year. That includes one-time donations, regular tithing, I'll match those as well, and or any GoFundMe or Giving Tuesday campaign, which we'll be launching soon, or anything you want to do on Facebook in honor of a birthday, anniversary, whatever. Again, through the end of the year. I'm going to trust Tamara to keep track of that for me. And give me a call or a text on New Year's Eve and let me know how much it hurts. Are you up for that?
Absolutely.
All right, excellent. So with that, I will end again. Thank you all very much. And as we take today's offertory, let's all join in singing Fill This Place.
This place is already full with praise. But we can lift up more praise because God is here in this place. Well done, Jenny. Fill this place with the praise of the Lord. Of all praise, lift you high, glorify the Ancient of Days. Holy saints, lift your voice, lift your hands, and rejoice. God is here. Fill this place with praise. Amen. And I made the 8 notes at the end. So I was sitting and listening to Jackie, and then I realised, oh, that's not the sermon's me. Oops. Woo, what a morning. What a morning. Jackie, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing a part of who you are, and for your generous offer as well. And I really do encourage people to challenge Jackie on that. And if any of you want to share your story, please let us know. We would welcome that. Because I think it's important for us to remember why we came to this church, what we have received from this place, but also why we keep going so that we can give that to other people. And when we give to other people, it's like the fruits of the Spirit. It comes from a place within our hearts. And so, I've not been looking forward to this week. For 3 weeks we have been looking at, this is the third week, we've been looking at fruits of the Spirit. And I knew I would have to talk about self-control, and I knew that I would have to listen to myself. And I would have to listen to myself as I prepared the sermon and as I delivered it. And, for a couple of weeks now I've been bashing the Gator fans, so it's only fair that I get this week. So we've been looking at fruits of the Spirit, and we didn't look at love, peace and joy because we're going to be dealing with them in Advent. But we've looked at forbearance and kindness in the first week, which is our willingness to understand each other from different perspectives and allowing each other to be the person that we need to be, however different that is from our own way of thinking. And then goodness and faithfulness we looked at last week. Goodness being godliness. Truly being the best version of ourselves, not just outside when people are watching, but inside too. In front of people and away from people. And so this week, gentleness and self-control. And you know what? The gentleness for me is much easier. It's been hard, but it's something I've worked on for a long time to try to be. I didn't say I was, but I try to be gentle with people when I meet them. And gentleness really is tender, mild-mannered softness of action or effect. And if you're one of the people that didn't get gentleness from me, I'm sorry, it's a work in progress. And some days I am better at these things than others. And like you, there are probably some things and some people that trigger the not so good. Even though in my heart, I truly want to be gentle with you. So, self-control. I'm going to share this little story with you. An elderly couple named Bill and Helen went to the county fair every year. And one year at the fair, there was a man giving a helicopter rides for $50. And having never been in a helicopter all his years, Bill begged Helen to let them ride. And she refused. $50 is $50. So the following year, the man was there again. And again, Bill begged. And again, Helen turned him down and said, $50 is $50. So the third year, the same exact conversation happened. Except this time, the pilot overheard. And he offered the couple a free ride. But there was one condition. They must not make a sound while in the air. Or they'd have to pay the $50. So Bill and Helen agreed, and on board they got. And as soon as the helicopter left the ground, the pilot began performing all sorts of hair-raising maneuvers. But try as he may, he couldn't get them to utter a sound. And when they finally touched down, the pilot turned to Bill and exclaimed, "That was an amazing show of self-control. You have earned your free ride." And Bill said, "Well, I nearly said something when Helen fell out, but $50 is all joking aside, self-control is restraint exercised over one's own impulses, one's own emotions, or one's own desires. And you see, when we live in the Spirit of God, then the fruits of the Spirit flow from us. And when we don't live in that Spirit, or we slip into living into our own spirit, then we can slide into this bad way of having no self-control. In fact, none of the fruits of the Spirit show from us. Now, most of you know that my biggest issue with self-control,
Chocolate.
it's chocolate. It really is. I second it to coffee. But chocolate is my biggest issue with self-control. I just have none. I get these 3 pound jars from, I should put a picture on the screen. The 3 pound jars of M&Ms, or peanut M&Ms. And it's not unusual for me to sit there of an evening with the jar, unless one of the dogs is on my lap and then the jar's here, and I just sit and I eat. And it doesn't stop. And the only way that I can start to have any self-control over this amount of like 4 inches deep of M&Ms that I can eat is to put a few in a dish and leave the jar in the kitchen. Now, a little secret, I do that sometimes, but then I go back and get another dish. But that's better than the big pot and eating from. But I really try, and I've tried, the last couple of days I've done quite well, because I was preparing for this and I thought I needed to. I mean, that's a physical way that I have problem with self-control, but all of us know there are ways in our spiritual lives and the ways that we live out our lives. And our lives could be so different if we practiced self-control. Controlling ourselves so that we don't say or do the things that are bad for us, but also affect the people around us. How well does it go if we don't hold on to our tongue and lash out at people? It doesn't just hurt them, but it affects us for a long time after, if we really care. We can insult people, argue with people, and we can even disempower people with our words. Yesterday we watched a documentary called Purple. It was a very short, 23 minutes or something, documentary about people up north who live in this very purple state. And they were asked about the social safety net. And oh my gosh, there were such different views. There was every view from radical socialists to, no, I've done everything myself and you should too. And yet these people intentionally came together to see how they could have dialogue and still be civil across it. And they were. And I have to tell you, the first time I watched it, I was not civil in my mind. Because some of the things people were saying, I was like, oh, don't be ridiculous. No, self-control, self-control. It is so difficult for us sometimes, but when I watched that yesterday, how vastly different these people thought about life, and yet they still have that self-control, and it meant that they could come together and eat. They could come together in dialogue because they were willing to listen. They were willing to not jump in and just say you're wrong. Even if they thought it, they didn't jump in with it. Proverbs 25:28 says, someone without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. There are many times in the New Testament where Jesus showed wonderful self-control. And I think especially at the time that Jesus was tempted by the devil and didn't cave in. But there's also examples in the Old Testament, David and Saul. You know, David was chasing after Saul for ages, and really he could have killed him, but he took a piece of his robe instead, rather than killing him, because he knew that God wanted him to be king. Nehemiah was starting to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, and then some armies came in to tear the walls down again. Do you know what it's like when you just started building and somebody wants to come in and tear it all down? It's like Jenga, isn't it? You're built up so far and then somebody comes in. Instead of losing his temper and fighting back, he just placed some guards there to watch over the building so that it still got done. And I also think about when Jesus was arrested and crucified. I don't remember a time where he lashed out at anybody. Oh gee, if you were going to do it, that would have been the time. There are many people in our our communities who have lived with addiction. And every single day they show self-control in order to live their lives to fulfillment. Self-control is a fruit of the Spirit. And I left it till last because I think it's one of the hardest. But it's one that we can continue to work on. I can continue to work on putting chocolates in a small bowl instead of taking the whole tub. I can work on not going back for a second bowl. Maybe we can work on when we want to throw out an insult or react to a situation that would inflame it. We could hold back, stop, listen, and if so inclined, pray. And I'm going to be clear here that self-control does not mean we lose out on anything. You see, when we have self-control over our addictions, we get control over our lives. When we have self-control over eating, we get back control over our health. And when we have self-control over our reactions, we get back control over the outcomes of our encounters. And so it goes on. Self-control can bring us a sense of peace. Maybe not all the time. Maybe not in that moment. But later that day, we can look back and say, gee, that could have gone so differently if I hadn't exercised self-control. I want to share this very short story. Marshmallow Man, Walter Mischel, is an Ivy League professor known for his experiments in self-control. Nearly 50 years ago, he created a test to see how various 5-year-olds would respond to being left alone with a marshmallow for 15 minutes with instructions not to eat it. And with a promise that if they didn't, they would be given 2. Famously, preschoolers who waited the longest for the marshmallow went on to have higher SAT figures. In later years, they were thinner, and they earned more advanced degrees, used less cocaine, and coped better with stress. It's not just good for everybody else, it's good for us too. We are known by our actions. So we need to keep working on those actions and keep trying to live by the Spirit of God and reflecting that, so those fruits come from us. So I pray that we can be kind and gentle with each other as we journey through this life, that we can help each other as we make mistakes and struggle through, for they will know us by our actions. Amen.
Amen.
And that Spirit of the living God is what we're going to sing about now. If you want to, please rise. If you want to sit and reflect, that's okay too.
Spirit
God, we ask for your Spirit to fall afresh on us. Some of us are so weary. And yet we know that with your Spirit we can be enlivened again. We give you thanks for so many blessings in our lives and in the lives of our community. We give you thanks that Barbara had the hole in her heart fixed on Friday and is here this morning. We give you thanks that there are those in our congregation who need surgery and will be getting that soon.
Amen.
We give you thanks that there are needs in our community and that we are ready to meet them because of your Spirit, oh God. We also know there are those in our community who need your comfort, your healing, your touch. But we also know that we are called as individuals to sometimes be that touch, to be that company, to be the person that sits and is present. So God, touch our lives, touch our hearts, open our ears, that we may know what it is that we need to do to answer the prayers of your people. Bless us. Continue to bless us. Help us to look around us and see your beauty, your glory, in each other as well as in nature. For we are created in your image, God, and in your image we are beautiful. So let us see that in each other. And as we try to practice self-control, God, keep reminding us we can do it. 1 minute at a time, 1 day at a time, whatever it takes. God, we lift all of our prayers to you. We give thanks again for Tom, who was in hospital this week, but has come home again. Amen. We give thanks for Jackie's offer to help this church get on an even footing for the new year. We give you thanks for the many people who come out every week to do what is needed. God, there is so much to give you thanks for. So we give you thanks for the spoken words that we have today, but also for everything that is on our hearts. We lift to you. And we thank you. Amen. Amen. And God, we thank you too for this meal. This is a meal that has been set before us, and we have been having this meal for 2,000 years. A meal that is so simple. I mean, who knew it? Over 2,000 years we're still doing it. Just a piece of bread and some grape juice. We're still doing it because it had such an impact. And each of us can have that impact in the world if we would just try. On that night, Jesus took bread. He gave God thanks. He blessed it. And then, he broke it. And he gave it to them and said, take, eat, all of you. This represents my body, which will be broken. Take, eat, and then share. So as we take whatever symbols we have today, remember him. And then he took the cup, he gave God thanks. He blessed it, and then he shared it. And said, take, drink, all of you. This is a sign of a new covenant. A covenant of love. As you drink of this today, I pray you will remember that you are indeed loved. We give you thanks, Lord, for this meal, for everything that we have in our lives. And as we bring our service to a close today, we know that we can touch heaven if we change earth, because heaven is within us.
Yes.
So when you rise as you are able and sing with us, we will seek your face. Most times this time. Thank you for worshiping with us today. Thank you for sharing of yourselves in this place. And I pray that as you leave this physical or virtual space, that you will look to God to see how you can move forward in really allowing the fruits of the Spirit to show from you, so that you can help other people and yourselves on this journey we call life. May God bless you and keep you and sustain you. Amen.
Amen.
May God's peace go with you.
And also with you.
Thank you. And just a reminder, 12:15, the meeting will start. There is coffee available, drinks if you would like them before then.